Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya Master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Anne-Marie, we've talked a few times about how there's this new aspect, this new sub-part of the psychology field that has emerged over the last 25, 30 years called the positive psychology field. Yeah. And it's fascinating. And we've had good conversations about it. We've had people who have talked about it quite a bit and so forth. We haven't had a graduate yet until today, because our guest today, Dr. Wendy O'Connor, studied at the University of Stanford in positive psychology. And she's going to be one of the very earliest people to get the degree. I mean, that's pretty cool.
That is amazing.
It's pretty cool. Actually, funny enough, my studies in positive psychology came after my clinical degree.
Is that right?
Actually, yes, because my degree was in general clinical psychology. But then when I went through a trying period of my own life, I came across positive psychology and became extremely interested in it because it was a time of survival, not thriving in my own life. And I knew there had to be a methodology for how people can get out of this place of surviving and going through the motions and getting more into a place of thriving. And there was the science of happiness.
The thing that always caught my attention where the positive psychology is concerned is that the gentleman who kind of got the whole thing started, Dr. Martin Seligman, did so as the president of the American Psychological Association immediately after writing a book about learned helplessness, which I mean, that's just one of those bizarre things.
Right.
I don't know about you. Anne-Marie, I don't know if you've ever read the book. I read like first half of the book. And like I said, I got halfway through the book and I couldn't continue. I was so depressed just from what I was reading in the book. And I kind of wonder if Dr. Seligman had the same response, that his own subject had just kind of depressed him so much he had to like turn the whole thing around. And so he launched his positive psychology movement when he becomes president of the APA.
I feel like now I'm concerned that we needed you to finish the book so that you learned how to get out of the state of learned helplessness.
Well, fortunately, that was about 30 years ago, so 25 years ago. So I read it right after it came out. So I think I've recovered, but hey, you never really know.
I think you're doing all right.
So. You've had some time, so hopefully you're back.
Hopefully so. So we're having a few issues with the connection here. Let's see if we can get those ironed out. But Anne-Marie, when we were talking about the positive psychology background, we've talked about, for instance, the fact that at both Harvard and Yale, when their first introductory classes were offered, both schools broke records in terms of people applying to be in the class. It was the most applied for class ever in the history of either institution. That's how big of it. And of course, you also think about the people who attend Harvard and Yale. They're the high pressure, top performing people, and then all of a sudden they're against everybody else who's high performing, and they get stressed to the max. It's no wonder they wanted to take a class in positive psychology.
Yeah, that would make sense. But gosh, if you pass that,
But it was like 1,200 people who signed up for the first class at Harvard.
That's incredible.
I mean, that's like 1/5 of the entire population.
Wow.
It's insane. So
Dr. Wendy was very lucky to get in, and
it's just incredible how, and then it's just kind of taken off ever since, to the point now where, and Dr. Wendy, I'm going to be curious about your take on this, but my take, just kind of looking from the outside, is that it's made tremendous inroads, yeah, but that's a new word, inroads in the field of psychology, but it's still resisted, particularly by the people who are more into the abnormal psychology, and they're like grudgingly letting it in, like, okay, well, they got a good point there. Okay, they got a point, but there's still a lot of resistance. Do you see that? That's what I see from the outside.
I haven't seen that. Where I've seen the resistance, which I find interesting, is in the general population. So the funny piece is everyone's desperate to get into a free course on how to be happier. Everyone's desperate to buy the next trendy, gadget or device or just weighted vest or whatever it is to be happier, healthier, desperate for those solutions. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, when it comes to something like, here we have positive psychology, you have a science of happiness, here's how you actually create true happiness. And the resistance is more so from this perspective of, oh, that's like wishful thinking,
Yeah.
Pollyanna approach to life. Oh, okay, just tell me to be happy and grateful. And it's funny because that's the resistance I see, is more of this like, oh, positive psychology, like that sounds fluffy. That sounds like woo. That sounds like not something that's actually going to change my life. It just sounds like I'm supposed to just dismiss all of my concerns, dismiss my sadness, dismiss my fears, and just be happy. And that's not what it's about. So that's the resistance I've seen, but I haven't seen kind of the begrudging acceptance of it.
Right, because woo absolutely has no impact on anybody's lives. We have a whole bunch of years on that one. So, but the other piece to it that I find to be absolutely fascinating is not only did Harvard and Yale have record-breaking experiences with their first launches of their intro classes, but the class offered by the professor at Yale, I can't remember what her name is, but her class she ended up putting online. And last I saw, 500,000 people had taken the class online.
Yeah.
I mean, I doubt you could take another Yale class of any kind, post it online, and get those kinds of numbers, because they just, like, oh yeah, another Yale class. Not this one. This one just took off. I mean, it's been used in corporate cultures. It's been used in foreign countries, in poor countries, poor cultures. It's all over the world, and it's been downloaded in places like Iran and Pakistan and Afghanistan, and usually against the will of the authorities, but they aren't really up to date on how to stop it entirely. So it kind of gets put out there anyway. It's amazing how far this thing has gotten. And
It is
this is only
amazing.
like 25 years in. What happens in 100 years? That's what I'm kind of curious about.
Yeah.
But
Well, in 100 years, we'll have some new research to update the
well, yeah,
course and to get people to another level of fulfillment and flourishing.
exactly. Yeah. So tell us about your experience and how you got into it. I mean, what you kind of touched on what your motivation is, but how did you hear about it?
Yeah, it was really back to this time in my life where I had been practicing as a clinical psychologist in private practice for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
I then had 3 daughters very close together. So I had my first daughter when she was 6 months old. I was pregnant with twins.
Wow.
And so we had 3 daughters under 2. And
Wow.
as you would imagine, life became very different going from 1 to 3 that quickly. I had 2 thriving practices. Things looked really like the epitome of success from the outside. I had a happy marriage. I had 3 beautiful babies. I had a very successful career. And on the inside, it felt very different. It felt like I was burning out. I couldn't keep up. I did all the right things. Why is this really, this is what it's supposed to be? This is as good as it gets. And so I just started doing my own research on really taking myself from a place of feeling like I'm hanging on to a place of I'm obsessed with my life and I love my life. And then when I started to dig into the research around it, and I love practical tools and roadmaps for success, once I started to implement all of that and see how effective they are, then I thought, this is exactly what I need to teach, in particular, women how to do. Because so often I've met more than I'd like to say women who will say, I did all the right things. I'm doing all the right things. Is this really as good as it gets? I'm not waking up excited to live my life. I'm not waking up excited and lit up by what I'm doing for work or what I'm doing with my free time. Like, I don't want to live this way, but languishing is a way that many people settle into as a good enoughness, just kind of functioning in default mode stuff. But once we learn how to rearrange the map a little bit and create some intentionality, well, then all of a sudden we get to unlock a new level of happiness, which has been awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. By the way, if you're noticing a change in my volume, I just realized my mic was 5 feet away from me. Like, oh, I should probably move it close to my mouth. So that's why I sound a little bit different right now. But yeah, absolutely. I love the insights that you were gaining there. But once you actually go into practice doing this, it's going to be different from any other kind of clinical psychology or abnormal psychology or anything like that, because you're focusing on different stuff. But I imagine there's also some carryover. Where's the overlap?
The overlap, as I see it, being in both worlds of clinical psychology and more recently in a coaching role, is the care and concern and support and wanting others to feel better. So the overlap for me is it's just who I am. So that feels like the bridge, the common thread. There's support, there's empathy, there's compassion, there's listening. Those elements are really similar. The focus is different. The focus is not on recovery per se, or healing through major bouts of anxiety or clinical depressive episodes. It is really about a lifestyle journey that takes into account strengths and values and desires versus trying to work through recovery or to heal through mental illness. So the focus becomes very different, but for me, it's just a kind of a different style of conversation, still with the same intention, is helping people feel better.
Yeah, well, that's always the goal, isn't it? But I love the way you frame that. In fact, let's go into that framing a little bit deeper, because while most of our listeners are fairly conversant with the whole topic of positive psychology, because we've talked about it often enough, I can't say we've ever had any true expert on, like yourself. We have the doctor on the show, so we got to take advantage of that. So give us like the elevator speech on what people really should know about positive psychology and why it's so important to study it.
This is what I'm about to say is why people love me and don't love me. Because you have a lot more control over your happiness and your ability to live a fulfilled life than you tell yourself you do. And there's the camp of people who love to hear that, and those are the people that hire me, because they're like, thank you, I thought that I would have more control, I just don't know the tools and I don't know how, like, help me with the how. And then there's the camp of people that will just say, you know, okay, of course she says that because she's a happy person, or of course she says that because she's wired differently, whatever it is. And the excuses / just belief system is so locked in to identity that they don't see that there's actually as much control. They see themselves as some victims of learned helplessness to a certain degree. So what people really need to hear every day and wake up believing every day, choosing to believe, choosing to look for evidence of the truth, which is you have a lot more control than you tell yourself. We hold ourselves back every single day because of the stories in our minds, and what we tell ourselves is true about who we are and what we can and can't do, and what we're meant for, and what we are worthy of. And as soon as we start to challenge those beliefs and we start to challenge the identity piece of who we actually want to be versus who we have historically seen ourselves, that's when all of a sudden we have all of this ability to make some major, major shifts in our lives. But there'll be the folks that will say, I don't think that's true. I've lived this way 100 years. And so that's my evidence, is my proof, and my proof will just repeat itself. And here we go.
And it reminds me of the old quote from Henry Ford: whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, either way, you're right.
100%. That's the truth of it, right? And that's what we, and you know, as running a happiness podcast, you will be and have seen people all the time that you witness get in the way of their own happiness. And it's like, you know, you want it. You're millions of people enrolled in this free course. You know, you want it.
Right.
But here we are still operating from an old, outdated software that's keeping us in a perspective of can't.
I was having a conversation with a friend shortly before we did the podcast today, and she had not heard of positive psychology. She wasn't aware of what had happened there. So I told her that she asked who my guest was, and I said, oh, she's a doctor of positive psychology. And she said, is that the same thing as toxic positivity?
Yes.
So why don't you address that one?
That's exactly what I was trying to mention when it came to the resistance we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. The resistance that I see is this idea of, oh, Pollyanna, everything's so great, right? Very dismissive, just toxic positivity, that everything should be seen through like these rose-colored glasses and nothing's really that bad and we should shrug things off. And that's not what positive psychology is. It's in fact a pretty gritty science. You know, the women that come into my world and go through my Life by Design program are not coming in to kind of phone it in. It's gritty. You have to actually choose to step inside the arena and to do the work. And it's work. I can't call it anything else. So there is this misconception of, oh, positive psychology is just this kind of light, you know, toxic stuff that just makes other people feel bad for feeling bad. In reality, it actually is pretty intense work that we're doing. And in the journey, as we evolve, as we up level, learn the tools and the skills, learn about yourself, your strengths and values, desires, how to marry all of those together, then it starts to flow and it starts to feel like who you are and how you live. But in the beginning, the just alone the awareness building, opening your eyes to seeing how you've been living and why, it takes a lot of courage to do this work.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And well, carrying on with the idea of the Pollyanna and so forth, like Pollyanna is a bad thing, which tells me that anybody who says that hasn't read the book Pollyanna. But nevertheless, put that aside for a moment. I kind of have an objection to the term toxic positivity because there's nothing positive about what they're talking about with that term. So why do you put the word positivity in there? Well, I think they do it because one of the things that kind of gets pushed by those who push a toxic positive approach is that you should behave positive even if you're not feeling positively, that you should fake it till you make it. And what they often end up being is in a place of being stuck in fake it. They never get out of the fake it mode. I mean, if fake it till you make it, you can actually get to the point where you make it, great. But if you find that it's not working that way, stop, because all you're doing is ingraining exactly the opposite of what you want to ingrain. And yet that seems to be what they're talking about with this toxic positivity concept. It's like that to me, that just doesn't wire properly. I don't know what your take is, but
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on this idea of there is absolutely some value. I wouldn't call it anymore like a fake it till you make it. I would coin it as something different, like align until it aligns. It's like something that's really not about faking, because what you're trying to bring into your reality, what you're trying to get your identity to embody, is a better version of you. And so it's not that we're trying to be, and this is an important distinction that I think a lot of people do get caught up on when they're trying to become their best selves or happier selves, flourishing, fulfilled selves. One of the questions I will get is, well, how do I know what's me and what's not? Like, if I'm going to be adopting a new mindset, if I'm going to be adopting new habits and behaviors, if I'm going to be letting go of things that haven't served me, like, how do I know what's true, authentic, and what's fake or false or another mask I'm wearing? And it's a really good question. And I think it leads to some really important conversations around this is the journey of both two pieces as I see it: the unlearning of the conditioning that we've brought with us over all these years of who we think we are, who we've been told we are, who we believe we are supposed to be, whatever that is, but also now the learning of what it means to truly be our authentic self. And you can only really learn that through experimentation and exposure and doing it. A lot of times women will say, like, I just want to know, like, so am I this or that, or would I do this or that? And you want the cart before the horse, you want the answers, but we can't have answers typically without the experimentation, the trial and error, seeing if the shoe fits, so to speak. And when it doesn't, like, what's much to what you're saying, if it doesn't fit, we toss it. There's other shoes out there, plenty of shoes, plenty of options, plenty of iterations, plenty of variations of who we can be. It doesn't have to be this, I have this concept of who I want to be, and so it has to be exactly that for me to feel good enough. It's really about experimenting and going on a journey of up leveling and evolution to see what fits and feels right.
Yeah, and the bit that you mentioned about conditioning, I'm glad you brought that term in, because I think most of us who want to make the shift into a more positive framework recognize the value of it, but very early on in our journey, if you will, we don't really recognize how we've already been conditioned. We know we have. I mean, if we talk about it consciously, we do, but then we immediately jump into another behavior where we're acting on the old conditioning. Even as we're trying to do something positive, we still do it negatively, which is a really odd thing. And it's hard to spot in yourself. And once you do spot it, then it's hard to deal with. And doesn't male, female, doesn't matter. It's just a hard thing to deal with. Talk about that bit, because I think that's probably the biggest piece, isn't it?
Awareness is the biggest piece of the work that we do in all of our journeys. No matter what we're talking about, changing, transforming, up leveling, any of the goals we have, anything we want to pursue, anything that we want to get better at, anything we want to achieve, master, it all comes down to first having awareness. And awareness is, as you're alluding to, can be very uncomfortable. It can feel very frustrating because suddenly I'm more aware of something that is potentially negative that I never really paid that much attention to or didn't know to the extent. So in the beginning, with a lot of my clients, we will have experiences where they'll ask, am I thinking this way more? Like, am I thinking more negatively now than I was before? And I'm like, no, this is actually the process is we're lifting the lid and we're seeing what's inside the pot. And so you're noticing the potatoes and the carrots, and you're noticing everything more than you ever did before, because you were just living kind of half asleep, just going through default mode of life. So now you see, and so now the colors are a bit brighter, but a lot of the colors we're looking at have had maybe a more negative history in people's lives. So they mistake that sometimes for, am I thinking more negatively? Am I feeling more negative? No, you're just seeing actually what's under the lid, how you've been operating, how you've been thinking, and how you've been showing up to your life. Now we get to take that awareness into the next stage of intentionality and designing something different than that. But because so much of our functioning is subconscious, that process is very eye-opening, because like you said, even if we are wanting to assume an identity of a version of us that's just the one, it's very easy to then, like, in half a second, go say, do, think the same old thing we've been thinking for 20, 30 years. So it's very active, and it's very open eyes, open ears. And that can be very overstimulating in the beginning until you get a handle on what to do with your awareness. Now that I'm aware of all these things, now what do I do with it? Because this can feel like a lot.
Yeah. And I was watching Anne-Marie. I don't know if you saw, but her head was going, nodding up and down very vigorously as you're itemizing all of these things. Because right, Anne-Marie? I mean, this is all real familiar to us.
I literally had, the first time I got a coach, I'd just had my second child, and I had like postnatal anxiety. So I sat with the coach, and did exactly what you said. I was like, I'm just thinking more negatively. I'm more depressed now than I was before I started. And it was like, yeah, you're noticing it now. And it was just opening that voice and having that awareness, as you said. And it makes such a difference, because then you can catch it, and then you can start making those changes because you're aware of it.
It's kind of odd too, because we're used to seeing it in other people. It's easy to see it in somebody else. It's a lot harder to see it in yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I've noticed that particularly here in spiritual circles, LOA circles, and so forth, we get really good at saying, boy, I see that this person really needs some help. It's looking in the mirror part that, well, first of all, we don't like doing it. It's not fun. And second of all, even if we do it, very often we refuse to see what's there. And then even if we do see what's there, then we have to do something about it. And then, like I said, you get depressed. So, I mean, it's like all the cards seem to be stacked against you.
Right. You don't know. A lot of times we don't know what to do with it. So now that my eyes are open, now it's almost like you're driving. I visualize this like you're driving down some windy dirt road in the country, and your lights are super dim. And then all of a sudden you think, oh yeah, right, I should turn on my brights because I'm in the dark. And you turn on the brights, and all of a sudden you see, like the owl and the squirrel and all these woodland creatures. And you're like, oh my God, this is a terrifying wood situation. When did they come from? And you're like, no, they were always there. They were just in the darkness. You couldn't see beyond where you're shining your light. So once you turn your light on and you see everything, there is, for a lot of people, this jolt of, oh my gosh, now what do I do? And like you said, people feel like I have to, if I know it, I have to do something about it. And that's not true. And I don't want people to feel like it's like this chase and this constant, I have to work on myself and work on myself and work on myself forever. It's a choice. We get to choose. You get to look at what's shining under that light and say, what pieces of this do I want to be different or better? What pieces of this am I at peace with? What pieces of this am I not at peace with, but I actually don't care enough right now to do a damn thing about it? Right? So we get to really see the ingredients and then look at the ingredients and decide what we're going to do with them. And it doesn't have to be because we see it now we have to do something. So I think that actually really can intimidate people from doing the work, right? And that's why we kind of keep our blinders on and kind of stay staring at the ground, and we live on default and repeat patterns so often. It's because we don't even know what we would do with all the information, and then we feel pressured that we have to work on ourselves or we won't feel good enough. And that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, well, the pressure is also an important point. I mean, going back to the analogy of the headlights out on the road, you turn their headlights on. There's also social constraints where the headlights are concerned, because if another car is coming the other way, you're supposed to put the headlights down. So it's kind of like a mirror of the fact that you're supposed to do work on yourself, but don't show it too much in society, because you're just going to offend some people if you do that. So, and people feel that. They feel that kind of a pressure going on. So not only do they have the internal pressure, they got the external pressure. It just kind of adds to the whole thing.
Well, yeah, no one wants to go to the dinner party and just be like, oh, let me tell you all the things I just discovered about my crazy self. and all the things I have to work on and all the things I haven't cleaned up about myself. I am a real interesting character, let me tell you. Right? No one wants to show up as a half done, half baked cookie, though they're the most delicious. No one wants to show up as a half baked cookie. We want to get to the other side. We just want to be there. We just want to wake up tomorrow as him, as her. And so there is this messy middle that is not only uncomfortable within ourselves, but also how are we doing this while we're trying to uphold our lives, our roles, our responsibilities, all the hats that we wear. It can be tricky. And that's why, honestly, I think it's so helpful for people to either have a group of people that are doing the work so that you have a space that you get to do this work with like-minded humans on a journey that you feel like you're not alone and you're not the one showing up as a half-baked cookie to the party, or to have a therapist or a coach or just a mentor or a confidant, somebody that gets it, is really important, because that journey can feel, especially when our minds play tricks on us with all of our distorted thoughts, it can be very easy to suddenly have awareness and then to mangle it into something negative about who we are. And it can reinforce a lot of negative core beliefs. And so it can feel like I don't even want to do the work because I just feel worse about myself, and that's not the vibe.
Yeah. Yeah, you can just feel it just saying that. I mean, the vibe just comes right through. It's funny how that works.
Just like any kind of therapy, you go down before you go up. But I think what I like about positive psychology is, and a lot of people think you're just putting an act on and that you suddenly see it, you just got gratitude for everything. But actually, you're doing a lot of work on getting to know yourself and what your values are and what you want to achieve. So I think it's just making a new friend in yourself, which I think is always a wonderful thing to do.
I agree with that. And I think that if we change the language a little bit, there would, I think, feel like less resistance. If we love language like high performance, we love language like that, which is still doing the work. It's still holding yourself to a higher standard. There's still a lot of discipline and dedication and follow through that's involved with that, but that's looked at as a positive. We could change the language around positive psych and just be like, this is really the practice of optimizing ourselves. So whether that comes from connecting more with what we're really naturally good at, whether it comes connecting more to what's meaningful and valuable to us in terms of our values, or we think about just truly living a life from a place, a well of what we really want and desire. Now it's not like I'm just going to slap on a smile and be cheerful all day. It's actually seeing that this work is the foundation for everything else that we experience in our lives. And so a lot of the reason that people will wake up and say, is this really as good as it gets, is because that foundation was never laid. That foundation was never built. We just followed the motions of what we were told to do to have success, or what we were told to do to have happiness. We need to get a good college degree and a good job and an apartment, and then we need to get married and have 2.5 kids, and we need to have a house, and don't forget the picket fence, and don't forget the crock pots, and don't forget. And we do all the things, and you're like, yeah, like, look at my Instant Pot dinner tonight. And then we're like, what? How am I not happy? Isn't this what I was told makes us happy? It's like, yes, you were told this, but this is the wrong roadmap. And I'm sorry that you were never taught that, which is why I get a little worked up and activated on this conversation, because I keep picturing in this moment when I talk about it this way, that we really need to be teaching our children how to design from the foundation up happiness and health and wellness from within. And we don't. We just let everyone go through the track and kind of get spit out the pasta maker. And then you land thinking you're this fully formed, cute pasta. And you're like, I taste disgusting. What's the problem?
I think it's the first time I've ever been compared to pasta on the program. Okay, well, that's a new one. I like that. No, but it's really, really important stuff. You mentioned something else too that I want to bring in. You mentioned working with other people. And one of the things that always occurred to me where the abnormal psych and clinical psych and behavioral psych were concerned is they all had their own variations on group therapy, group work. But from what I saw in them, yeah, there was progress that was made, but there was a lot of stuff that actually seemed to work against the progress just because of the nature of what they were talking about. It always occurred to me, if there was something that was what we now call positive psychology and people were doing that in group, that would actually be more effective. What I don't know is whether my theory is correct, So I'm looking for validation here. Am I on the right track?
I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, I know from the side of group work in a coaching model with positive psychology and the work that I do, the power of a group is infinite. Like, it is so impactful. And it's funny because I have a lot of people that will come in to my world and feel very strongly about doing one-to-one work, but be so nervous about a group and really feel resistance around a group and not want to share in a group. And then those who come into the group are always saying, I can't believe how valuable this was because I'm not alone, and because just her story is exactly how I feel, but like I never thought of it that way, or I didn't say it like that, or I didn't. And so this whole idea of like we're coming together to rise up collectively through the context and the nuances of everyone's individual life dynamics, beliefs, mindset, all of it, it's exponentially more powerful, in my opinion, than a lot of one-to-one work. So on the other side, when I say I don't really have any idea, I never really did much group therapy. That was not something that I enjoyed in graduate school. So I never went into that as part of my career. I loved one-on-one. I worked with couples for a while. But I will say, from the coaching lens and the positive psychology, strengths-based work lens, group work is just, it's unbelievable. And I see women making so much progress so fast because there's also this collective energy of like, we get each other and we want this for one another. And so she's doing it, so I want to too. And it's like the opposite of like a comparison trap. It's like this activating energy to follow through more consistently because you know you're part of something that means optimization, that means more of the good and less of the bad. So it is very powerful in this side of the world.
Mm-hmm. And it makes sense too I mean, this show was originally about the law of attraction and the spirituality surrounding that. And then after a couple hundred episodes about law of attraction, we figured we had that covered, so we had to expand it. But the point is, there is that piece to it. And that piece was one where a major lesson was, a major message was, when you connect with somebody else in a positive way to try to attract the kind of life you're looking for, you're going to create a multiplying effect. It's not just the two energies that are involved, but the two energies kind of create an exponential effect just by interacting. And I kind of think from what you're saying, that's really what you're describing is happening in the group, the group meeting or the group therapy situation when they're focused on the positive psychology.
It's really how can I think? I want to think about this in a way. You will see people on social media who create perceived success, wealth, joy, love, all the things. And what's happening behind the scenes is happening, whatever it is. But as soon as you meet someone in person that has what you want, all of a sudden, this generates something very different within us. We can watch somebody online and say, oh my God, that's amazing. And I wish that was for me, or I wish I was that person, or and you can see it, but it's so removed from your reality, your immediate sense of what's real and what's possible. But then you go out to lunch with some girlfriends and someone says whatever they say, and you are like, she actually did it. She actually has it, or she actually got there, or now all of a sudden what's ignited in me is that possibility. It's not just some stranger on the internet or somewhere. This is real. I could have it too. If she can, so can I. And that's what I believe the energy is that gets to be this incredible ripple effect in group work. And in my mastermind in particular, is that you see this click for people. You see it click because it's not just this anonymous human that seems to have it all together. It's literally the person right on the screen with you, living life as you are living it, and they did it. And now you're like, oh, okay. Like, now you just like raise the bar. Okay, I thought maybe I could like really wish for it, but like not do it.
Oh, wait a minute, you gotta do the work. It reminds me of the joke about the woman who said, yeah, I joined a health club, but it didn't work out because I found out I actually had to go to the class.
Right. But the difference is, in my opinion, because I hate working out, so the difference here is that this activation, this level of inspiration, activation, momentum, motivation, is all, you're going to do the work, but in my opinion, it's far less annoying than exercise. So it's like, it's a kind of more of a fun like game. It's like a fun game of, oh my gosh, like what's going to be like the next little shift I can make this week, a tiny thought this week, a tiny habit, a tiny behavior, that's going to make a difference. It kind of feels like a fun, happy challenge versus you don't have to sweat the way you have to sweat at the gym. Maybe that's what it is. It's the lack of sweat.
Some people might say that they're sweating in a different way. Yeah, I mean that's just going to be some people's perception, you know.
But you don't need deodorant for it.
On the other side of like coaching, something that I've enjoyed, because I do like going to the gym, but my coach is quite into positive psychology, and something I like it when we're on our coaching calls is the fact that something I'm going, oh, that's triggered me. What's that about? And rather, I quite find that quite interesting because it's like, oh, I'm learning something else about myself, and that's something else I can take off my list then because it's brought it up, listening to somebody saying something. I'm like, oh, what's that about?
Interesting. We'll say more about that. Yeah, say more about that. That's interesting. I want to follow you on that train of thought.
So it could just be somebody says something in joke or just say something and it might trigger something from my childhood. I know somebody said something, I can't remember what they said, but it triggered in the fact that when I was 11, I'd been babysitting with my mum, came back and my dad was on the floor and he'd had a stroke. And it's just suddenly brought all that emotion up and I was like, oh, that's triggered me. It showed me that I needed to just go and do a little bit more work on that. And I just find that because that's just getting more stuff out of me.
Yeah. Moving through it, processing it, making sense of it, understanding how those things, and a lot of the work that I do is not huge into childhood past history stuff. But what I do always say is that what does come up is relevant. And so as soon as something comes up is a reaction to your environment and to something you hear or feel, it's always worth exploring. There's something there that you don't have to, but you could open up a little bit more and you could see what's under the lid of that idea, this memory or this feeling or this concept. What's there? And is it something that I want to do anything with? And you may have had that same memory and just thought, I'm not interested in opening that one today, but like, that's good to know for someday. But you can also have these moments where you just say, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that, but look at how that's connected to my life because I realize just this instance or just this memory has affected me in these ways. And all of a sudden you connect dots and those dots are awareness. And that awareness again gets to turn into intentional living moving forward in a different conscious way.
Yeah, intentional living. That's a great phrase right there. It's one that most people don't have any experience with. They may think that they do, but they're spending 99% of their time doing the exact thing they did the day before and the day before that and the day before that. And oh, by the way, the day before that. Intentional living, that takes some effort. You have to actually make some changes in order to have that happen.
That's right. But it doesn't have to be major. It doesn't have to be intimidating. Doesn't have to be an overhaul. I think that's another reason people feel some resistance to opening the hood, lifting the lid, is this idea that my whole life is going to need an overhaul. And I don't have the capacity for that. I don't have the time, the energy. I don't even know where to start. I don't have the roadmap. And so it's just like, keep the lid shut then. Let's just do it, right? Like let's just do life as we've been doing it because that comfort, that familiarity, it feels way less threatening to us than the idea of opening up the hood and doing some work and tinkering around in there.
Yeah, that comfortable zone is just that area of comfort and safety that isn't comfortable at all. It's amazing how it trips us up over and over and over again. We just want to be comfortable, and the comfortable doesn't get us there.
No, but it does feel like it's protecting us from something worse. And so it's the place that I call the comfort zone the dream graveyard.
Yes. I can't even bring myself to call it the comfort zone because there's nothing comfortable about it. So I call it the familiar zone because I know it's familiar, but I just don't buy into the comfort part. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So you mentioned the masterclass, and I love the title of it. Talk a little bit about your masterclass, and you got one coming up pretty soon, don't you?
I have one coming up, and I'm so excited because I'm one of those people that gets very excited around the clean, fresh slate of a new month or a new quarter or a new year or a new week. And so I created a masterclass for people who feel like I don't want to coast through the end of the year. I don't want to hang on or survive it. I don't want to settle. I want to end this year feeling really powerful, unstoppable. I want to feel like momentum has been built. I want to feel like progress has been made. Visible results are already happening in my life. And some people will call this time like the second new year. People get pretty excited about the September to December period of the year because they're like, oh, it's the second new year. Like this is something that feels big. And the way I like to look at this segment of the year is that when we intentionally design the final few months of the year, it sets you up for such a beautiful, smooth transition into the new year. And you don't start with everybody else on January 1st trying to create goals and trying to get started from zero. You already have the ball rolling. You're already 16 chapters ahead. And it just feels like you already crushed it. And now we get to just maintain it into the new year. So I created a master class called the Fierce Finishers. And it's really, I will be teaching the science of happiness, how to utilize the science of happiness for really taking ownership over your final few months and feeling incredible by the end of the year.
And give us, I mean, I don't want to take away all the content, but give us like a taste of, what's some of the science behind this that it's useful to know.
So we're going to go into a couple categories, but because I haven't yet even designed it, because this is literally hot off the press, Fierce Finishers Masterclass is literally a baby that was just born in the last 24 hours.
Wow.
So what will be created in this masterclass is going to be obviously the really most impactful and beneficial mindset shifts, the most impactful, beneficial habit hacks, and truly teaching people what we talked about today, which is the parts that keep coming up are the importance of and how to utilize awareness so that you're not feeling like you're noticing things or knowing things but don't know what to do with it. And the start of how to roadmap it out, like literally the map of what you're going to do with the mindset shifts, the habit shifts to create this path. We could call it the road to freedom for 2025. But I can't tell you all the secrets because they don't even exist yet. They're just marinating up here, and then they're going to fully form into an epic masterclass. It's totally free. So it'll be super fun to just have this conversation and to get people excited about ending the year strong.
And for those who want to sign up for it, once it can actually be signed up for, because it can't be signed up for yet, but once that happens,
sign up for it right now. Yes, you can. You guys can sign up for it right now. You'll be the first on the VIP list. You can just DM me at Dr. Wendy O'Connor on Instagram and just say, I want in. And I'll be like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I got you. And then I will be sending out an email probably within the next week or so, probably after the next 48 hours. And it'll have all the details and a more of a formal sign up process. But I'm pretty informal as it is. So you just DM me and say you want to come and I'll add you to the list.
Beautiful. All right. So we gave our listeners an advance notification that the rest of the public doesn't even know about yet.
They're the first to know. That is very exciting.
I love that. That's fabulous. I was also thinking about, I mentioned a conversation I had with a friend before we did the podcast. I was thinking about a couple of things that came out of that conversation. One of the things that came out is how when we're making changes, we can be going through times we may have gone through some challenging times, really, really difficult times. And those difficult times end up creating those neural pathways that become very difficult to overcome. That's what makes them difficult. They're ingrained, they're deeply embedded in the nervous system. So even if we become and I love the term, by the way, the fierce finishers, even if we decide to become fierce finishers, we're fierce finishing against that old background. Talk about that for a bit, because that's probably the biggest challenge we face, I think.
It always is the biggest challenge we face. But the way I like to think about it is that we're not, and this is where, when we talk about intentionality, that topic is a broad umbrella. Underneath that umbrella, though, are nitty gritty details of how we show up in our lives, specifically the language we use. So when we use things like working against us and coming up against and like this negative connotation, instead of thinking about it as, yes, we have had some what fires together, wires together negative beliefs for a very long time. They've held us back. We're going to work with them. How about we come alongside of those beliefs and now we choose? It's like, this is how I want your audience to think about it. It's like you've been riding the same train on the same track for 100 years, but we are building a new track for you. And so it's not like this track has to be demolished. It has to be like physically, it doesn't have, nothing bad has to happen to blow it up for you to have an alternative. We actually can just kind of step onto the next track, step onto the train alongside what's been over here. And then as this train starts to get the grip of its new track, now we're starting to create a flow of what becomes the new norm. But I don't want people to think about it like it's against the grain and it's hard against the current and you're just trying to swim against the current and it's more so like we're coming alongside what already is. We're looking at what already is. We're understanding why we've held ourselves back as much as we have. And now we are simply going to choose a new track that, yes, we're going to take the work to build track by track, but now we get to step onto this. And this is the alternative everyone wants to live on, but they think they're supposed to do the work to like blow up this train first. And you can just skip that step. You don't have to do that part. We can just
we don't like blowing
step over here.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. There doesn't need to be any aggression whatsoever. We can just notice a thing. Oh my gosh, no wonder I've been on the same damn train all this time. Of course I have the same damn results. Of course. Is there another train? Is there another train out there that takes me somewhere else? Well, yes, there happens to be a new one being built right now. Like, let's get on it. And then let's slowly go.
With the railroad analogy, you're talking about building a switch or a point in so that you can just flip the switch. And now instead of going down the main track, you're going down the side track that goes around all that broken part of the main track and then reconnects later on. Like, okay.
Yeah. Right? That's what it is. So we're going to create new neural connections. We're going to create new what fires together, wires together. We're going to create a new foundation so that eventually that track feels so smooth and automatic and familiar that this is just who you are and how you live. That's the idea. But we don't need to think about it like we have to like outrun the other track or to fight against the other track or we have to destroy the other track or work against it. It doesn't actually have to be that type of energy around it at all.
I'm curious, do you get resistance on that point from therapeutic circles? Because a lot of therapists are all about, you got to go into the old stuff, you got to root it out, you got to feel it out and all this kind of stuff. And you're saying, well, you really don't have to do all that. You can just kind of go around it. They're going to accuse you of bypassing, I would think.
Yeah. I haven't asked anyone their opinion. So that's kind of how I operate. I just kind of do what works and figure it out and go full steam on my track. So I haven't opened my eyes to say, what do you guys think? Or to me, frankly, it doesn't matter. Right? To me, it's like the value that I've had, the meaning that I have and the value that I have in my career that I do is so I'm in my zone and I'm in my bubble and I'm just doing my thing every day that I'm not looking around to see what anyone thinks, honestly, a lot of the time, but especially more of like the clinical world. Cause this is the fun world I'm in over here.
I love that. I mean, you're not even giving it any attention at all. No energy going there. Not even a little tiny bit. Just, nope. Okay. You do your thing. I'm doing my thing.
Yeah. Not interested. Yeah.
Well, it's the best way to not take it into, to use the LOA terms, to not take it into your own vibration. You just don't pay any attention to it. Like, okay.
Again, right?
My way, we're good.
We can just notice things and move on, or just not even try to look. A lot of times people, this is another example of how we hold ourselves back, is that we look for feedback or validation, or we look for acceptance, or we look for support, or we look for 2 thumbs up before we take a bold move in our lives. And it feels very important to me that I work every day little by little to embody more and more of like, that's not actually how we have to live. Like, you do what you believe is best and right for you, and the world will figure themselves out.
I love that. Because among other things, that's how you can disconnect from all of the negativity out there. Because now you don't even have to answer to the negativity anymore.
No. And this is a reminder, especially if when you have a presence on social media, or you might get some interesting comments, or you might get some interesting DMs, or you might get some interesting reactions. And there is very easily for me a part of me that wants to cling into it, hook into it, and explain, because I know your reaction is based on this limited approach, and you're not hearing me, so I gotta just like get to you. And then I hold myself back and I'm like, no, it's actually not the path. The path is just to notice a thing, and that's where they're at, and you just move on and keep doing. You stay in your lane and you let them do their thing and you do yours. And if we could just have less friction, chosen less friction with those around us, and whether they approve or disapprove or like it or not like it, it doesn't matter. It's just your life. So either you're going to choose to follow your course of happiness, or you're going to choose to please the world and be miserable. Those are the two options. Those are the only two options you have, apparently.
True. Yeah. No, it reminds me of something that my ex-wife was a former therapist for about a 10-year period. And one of the things that she told me about was a method that she would use to teach clients how to stop engaging with people who are really problematic in their lives. And the way she'd do it is she'd pick up a cushion from the couch and toss it to them and say, toss it back to me. So they toss it back, she'd catch it, said, okay, now catch it again, toss it to them. All right, toss it back to me. And this time she'd let it fall to the ground. And she'd say, that's how you stop a process. You just stop engaging in it. And it's a very, very simple, but a very clear way to say, you just don't engage. You just don't do it. You just let the pillow drop to the floor.
I think that's the hardest part of parenting is letting the pillow drop to the floor when you really get triggered all the time, right? There's all the things all day long that I'm just like, just breathe and create space between stimulus and response. And then sometimes I don't create space between stimulus and response. So, you do the best you can. But yeah, in an ideal world, we start to notice more and more opportunities to create that buffer and that space to actually align with the version of us we most want to be. And a lot of times our reactions, because they're so automatic and truly subconscious, we're not giving ourselves the leg up to be able to choose something different. We just did it again. Oh, shoot, I did it again. Right? Just like Brittany would say.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. Well, and Anne-Marie, I mean, we've talked, I mean, you've mentioned a few times your relationship with your daughters and the things that you've done to try to break that kind of a pattern. And you've seen the results of it, because you are able to break the pattern many times, and it produces fantastic results, sometimes beyond your expectation.
Yeah, no, I'm really proud of my girls at how strong they are. And they don't get me wrong, they're completely different personalities. And one of them is I do say to her, you're kind of looking half glass empty there, darling. And talking about her power and everything. But as you were saying it earlier, I was just thinking, my goodness, if we took it out of university and put it into primary school, what we call primary school, wouldn't that just be wonderful? Because those kids would have that power and they wouldn't know anything else.
It does feel like a bit of a mission there. It does feel like something's brewing that I need to figure out on my end over here. How do we get this how do we teach more people? How do we make this just life skills stuff we should all know?
Personally, I think the answer is to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because it's the ripple effects. We don't necessarily see where the ripples go, right? But the ripples go all over the place all the time. So when you're doing your stuff to help promote the more positive approaches to handling life's problems and so forth, it's going to have a ripple effect in many ways that you won't even see where the ripple is going. So
you're right. No, that's a good reminder. It really is, because I've always said that too. I never wanted to become, or was never interested in becoming some big brand that's famous. In fact, I've had some really amazing invention ideas. I can't tell you what they are yet, but I've thought, my daughter said, Mommy, you'll be famous. And I was like, I recoiled at this idea. I said, no, please, no, that's not the point. I do not want to be famous. I'll have a spokesperson for me. Someone else will do that. I've never wanted that. I've always wanted to if I could just help one person today, if I could help one person today. But then I will say, on the flip side, there are days like this conversation that it feels almost frustrating. Like, why doesn't everyone know this yet? Why aren't we speaking this way yet? Why aren't our kids? Why? Oh, and it's like, I wish we could make that shift faster. And I wish I could like clone versions of me and everyone else doing this type of work to just infiltrate everywhere, and we can't. And so there's this very slow burn sometimes that you're like, okay, one person at a time. It's still very valuable, and the ripple effect is there. I will have clients be like, so now my husband asks, well, what would Wendy say? And what would Wendy do? And how about Wendy would say this? And so, and the husbands and children of my clients will now have a ripple effect just from my clients going back to their world and talking differently, thinking differently, modeling differently, how to do life. All of a sudden they'll come back and tell me, oh my God, my kid just did this. My husband just said that. My boss just that. And you're like, oh, it's happening. Okay, good. Keep going. Like, keep being that person that is just influencing the world in a positive way. It's so cool.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories is a guest who was on the show about a year or two ago, where she was talking about how she was trying to make some changes to her own mindset. And so she made little Post-it notes and posted them around the house with little messages to herself, so one in the mirror in the bathroom, and one in the kitchen, and one in the living room, all these different places, just these little messages. And I think her goal was she wanted to do some weight loss. So she was trying to change her mindset around weight loss. And it turned out her husband lost 20 pounds just by seeing the same note around the house.
That is so funny.
There's the ripple effect.
And I bet he did it in a week's time, didn't he?
Probably, yeah.
It's always a conversation with my husband. He's like, oh, this. And I'll be like, oh, that. And the next week he's like, oh, I'm better now. And I'm like, oh, good for you. It took 1 week to lose that 10 pounds, didn't it? Good for you. You like looked at a salad and everything's fine. So that is really funny. But yeah, it's true. It really is. You don't know, much to your point. I love the point. You don't know where the ripple effect is going. You don't know how far reaching it is. And that's a really cool part of doing this work and the work that you guys are doing. It's just, you don't know how far it's reaching. And it's pretty amazing because it's reaching far.
Well, you're reminding me, we have 3 things we like to do at the end of every episode. The third one touches on this, so I'll get to that in a moment. But the first one, for someone who wants to reach out to you, you mentioned Instagram. Is that the best way for somebody to find you, especially if they want to talk to you, perhaps about exploring doing some work with you?
I think it is the best place. I'm kind of on all platforms at this point, but where I spend the most time is Instagram at Dr. Wendy O'Connor. And I love when new people come in to say hi, or I heard you here, or speak about this, or can you explain that? I love having those conversations. Again, the ripple effect, it's happening. So I love to support that. Feel free to come say hi to me there anytime. But that's probably the best way to get in touch with me.
Okay, very good. So I'm glad we got that one covered. Number 2, I like to go to Anne-Marie because as my co-host, she's not only co-host, but she's a former listener. And so she kind of has the listener's perspective. That's the way I look at it anyway. I think it's true. I think she really does have the listener's perspective. So Anne-Marie, I know you've been thinking about this. We saw a lot of the nodding of the head, so you gave a lot of thought to it. But what's your perspective on how to tie it together today?
I think what's kind of touched me today is just the freedom of your talk, in the fact that, well, I don't care. That doesn't bother me. And I've loved that freedom of just like, it almost gives people permission to go, actually, I don't have to worry about that. But I think the golden nugget for me today is the intentional living comment, taking that power over your life and taking those actions to achieve it. But actually, those actions don't have to be big to have an impact.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You can see why I like to have her do this, because she's good at it.
Yeah, very good. I love that summary too.
And then the final thing we'd like to do is something I noticed a few years ago that ties into that ripple effect that we were talking about. Because now that we do all this stuff with social media, and we can do these StreamYard things where you're in California or wherever you are, and I'm in Connecticut, she's in the UK, and we treat it like it's normal now. 30 years ago, this was impossible. Now it's every day. We're able to, people who want to write books, they can get published by others, but now they can also self-publish. So there are people putting out books like crazy. There are people putting out courses like yourself. People are offering coaching. People doing all kinds of stuff, and they're sharing with as many people as they can find. They do the podcast to explain their stuff there and so forth. They're just doing everything they can to get the word out, to share as much information as they can, to share the tools the best they can, which is what you're doing as well. But the thing I noticed is, we have a gap in there. That ripple effect, that darn ripple effect, produces a situation where people we've never heard of, people who we'll never meet, we'll never see, we'll never know anything about, end up picking up the material in some way and applying it in some way in their life, and they get a great benefit out of it, and we don't hear about it. And so we figure, well, there's no ripple effect going on. I say, you know what? We should do something about that. So Dr. Wendy O'Connor, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, who you've been helping in ways you didn't even know about, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you're making a difference in this world.
Thank you. That's so lovely.
Yeah, I think it's very important. And since I've started doing that, I've noticed the ripple effect that comes out of that. So ripple effects come out everywhere.
They really do. You're absolutely right. I love that. It's very powerful.
Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Best of luck with what you're doing. Best of luck with the upcoming masterclass that is being written as we speak. I mean, this is exciting stuff.
It's exciting stuff, hot off the press. Yes, I love it. Thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun conversation. I feel like we could continue for hours and hours more, but I really appreciate your time, and spending it together was really, really nice.
Oh, we do definitely appreciate it. And we appreciate our listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.